Hello fellow orchid lovers, it's Danielle here with a video about how I fertilize my orchids in water culture. So a lot of you have been asking about my fertilizing routine, what I use, how much I use, how often I use it. So I'm just going to basically go over those particulars, and then I'm going to go into some recent changes that I've decided to implement. So my orchids are always in fertilized water. Every time they get water, they get fertilizer. It varies the amount based on what the orchid is doing. So in colder seasons, some of these orchids slow down. And since that's the case, I do lower the amount of fertilizer that they receive at those times. In the growing season, whatever that may be for that orchid, and that's different for each orchid, I will increase the amount. So for instance, usually in the winter, orchids will slow down their growth. And I will change the ppm from typically, sorry, I'm turning the light on so that maybe won't be so much backlighting. Typically in the growing season, quote unquote, whatever that is for the particular orchid, because each orchid's growing season is different, I will be giving them just slightly below 300 ppm. In the cooler months, or the season that the orchid is not growing as vigorously, I will lower that to just below 100 ppm or just above 100 ppm, depending on what type of orchid it is. But they always have food in their water. And that's actually my decision based on what orchids get in nature. So in nature, orchids are always fed. Every single time that it rains, the runoff carries some type of nutrient. And it's never really a full blast of nutrients. It's, whatever happens to be available, running off of whatever it is that they are attached to, tree, branch, whatever it might be. And so I try to fertilize my orchids in a similar manner. They receive food all the time. So a lot of people also were asking what products I use. So we'll go into what I was using and why I was using it, but I've decided to change that based on my new environment. And that's something that I strongly recommend you consider. Not so much what I'm doing, but what your environment is, and how it affects your orchids and how it affects what they need. So for instance, if you live in a warmer climate, your orchids aren't going to have as big of a down season or a non-growing season, which orchids always grow. There is no non-growing season, they just slow down. But it's going to be different if you live in a warmer climate. I live in New York, upstate New York, at this point, recently. So my cold season is going to be a lot colder than someone that lives in Florida. So someone that lives in Florida and their orchids grow outside, and the temperatures don't really drop below 60 degrees during the day, and then whatever it may be, whatever your winter may be, they may continue to grow quite vigorously throughout the year and never really slow down. So you really can't base what you do on what someone else does. You have to look at your plants, where you are, and your environment, etc. So in the past, in my old home, my orchids lived in my environment. And what I mean by that is they were growing on windowsills throughout my house. The large majority of them were in my living room, in my bay window. And so I really couldn't control the environment the way that I wanted to, because I also had to live in that environment. So, most orchids are on the tropical scale. Some of them aren't, but most of them prefer warmer temperatures and higher humidity than a typical human really enjoys. And so I couldn't really give that to my orchids. Whereas now, the orchids live in the spare bedroom, and I can close the door and raise the humidity for the orchids if I want to. Or if, this is going to be our first year here in the house, we haven't really gone through a winter yet. If the winter gets really cold, again, I can close the door and give my orchids a little extra heat if I need to. Or I can set up the grow lights and give them a little more light throughout the day if I need to. So I'm going to have a lot more control over their growing season and what they're exposed to, and give them more desirable conditions. But you may not have that ability. You may also be growing like I used to in my living environment. And so you may not be able to give them what they need to continue that vigorous growth throughout the year. So you have to adjust your fertilizing regimen accordingly. So what I was doing, first of all, I had city water. I didn't know what was in the water. The ppm was pretty high coming straight out of the tap. And so in my old home, I used to use distilled water, and I would add a cal nitrate mix and a bloom booster, because it has those other micro and macro nutrients that an orchid needs. And the reason why I started using this product is because when I first started growing, I was just using any old fertilizer. I wasn't educated about the different types of nitrogen. I highly recommend, he's not posting anymore, but Rick L has a series of videos where he discusses nutrients, what they do, how they help your plant, etc. And they're very educational, and I highly suggest that if you have the time, you check out his channel. Again, he's no longer posting. He has an illness, and unfortunately he can't post at this time. So, but the content of those videos is extremely valuable to the orchid community. So if you are interested in educating yourself about nutrients, I am not the person for you. I can hear something, retain it, understand it, and act on it, but translating it to you, I'm not qualified to do that. So, definitely go check out his videos. But based on his videos, I did research. And based on that research, I decided to change to a cal nitrate mix. I was using in a monocle, primarily not this product, but another product that the total nitrogen was derived mostly from a monocle nitrogen. And in my environment, that was not good, because the way that I understand it, and again, I am not a scientific person. The way that I understand it is the monocle nitrogen relies on bacteria to break it down and make it available to your plant. That bacteria does not thrive in cooler temperatures. So, because I have cooler temperatures typically in my home, or did at the time, the monocle nitrogen was not breaking down quickly enough, and therefore it was burning my roots. And so I decided to change to a cal nitrate mix, because the nitrogen does not rely on bacteria to break it down, or warmer temperatures to break it down. So I switched to this. My root burn problem went away. My orchids responded extremely well to the cal nitrate. The growth improved tremendously. The quality of the growth, the leaves, they were so fleshy, and it was such a huge difference that I just love this product. And I will not be removing this product from my fertilizing regimen. It will still be given to my orchids once a month. I will no longer be worrying about mixing in a bloom booster, because I have decided to change to another product. So I was using distilled water. I was using these products before. If you're interested in the ratios, I have videos in the past that you can check out as far as that's concerned. But this is the product. These are the products that I was using before. And again, it's just a bloom booster. It's the brand's not important. It's just as long as they have those micro and macro nutrients. Because you can't just give it cal nitrate and expect it to be balanced. You have to add all the other nutrients that an orchid needs. So I was using these two. I also was using a seaweed supplement, which I don't have out to show you, because again, I didn't pick a particular brand. I just went with something that was available readily to me, and I didn't do any research on it. I just picked something because I wanted to see if it even worked. It does. I strongly believe in having, at this point, a seaweed or a kelp supplement in my fertilizing regimen. I did see the results, and I do believe that the plants benefit from it. So that gets me over to what I'm using now. I say that, but I haven't used it yet. I actually literally just got this today. This came a couple of days ago. So I heard a lot of really good things about this Kelp Max. A lot of people have said that this is a very good product. I did some research on it to try to figure out why it was something that people preferred. The research that I did made sense. If you're interested, I would strongly suggest you do that research. When you do purchase it, it comes with a little packet that explains about it, how they harvest the seaweed. It's supposed to be good stuff. Don't know yet. Didn't start using it yet. Will keep you informed. But because I was purchasing this product, the company that sells it is here in North Carolina. Here in North Carolina. I'm in New York. I mean, here in the United States in North Carolina. And they also put out an MSU fertilizer. Now, I used to use an MSU fertilizer many years ago. I've been using this for about 2 years. So before that, I was using an MSU fertilizer, and I have nothing against MSU fertilizers. They are supposed to be a balanced diet for your plant. But when I started to use this, the difference was so amazing that I stopped using my MSU fertilizer, and I just stuck with this. However, I did look at, the analysis. I read their documentation, and it made me curious to try it. So I ordered this MSU fertilizer. And an MSU fertilizer just basically means they did research on orchids many years ago, figured out what an orchid needs to grow, what an orchid needs to bloom, the different nutrients that make up its structures, et cetera, et cetera. They did extensive research on orchids and came up with what's called an MSU fertilizer that is supposed to be a complete balance diet for your orchid. So a lot of people do use MSU fertilizers, and I've decided that I like this one in particular. I like where they get their nitrogen source from. I like the different ratios. So if you're interested in it, that's what it is. It's put out by First Raise, and it, again, does come with a little packet that explains, their ratios and how they came to those decisions, and it absolutely, to me, makes sense. So we're going to try this and see how we like it. Now, like I said, I'm not getting rid of this. Because I don't need it, because I got that. But I'm not getting rid of this. Once a month, they're still going to get a boost of cal nitrate because I've seen how much this helps the orchids. They are always going to get a little bit of Kelp Max, period, the end. Love it. Love seaweed, kelp. Really think I really 100% think that this does help your plant. And then, the weeks that it's not getting this, so the other 3 weeks out of the month, we're going to be doing the MSU fertilizer and seeing how it goes. Now, you have to keep in mind, in my new environment, I also have well water, so I will not be using distilled water anymore. Distilled water was really because I didn't know what was in my tap water. I couldn't be certain about the elements. And like I said, it was a pretty high TDS coming straight out of the tap. Here, it's usually below 100, the TDS. And like I said, we did have a sample taken to make sure there was no pesticides, no bacteria. And also along with those samples, it tells you how much copper, it tells you what the pH is, which actually mine is a very high pH. It comes out of the tap very alkaline, usually around 8. So that's great for me because as you know, when you add nutrients, it drops the pH. And I like to start off at a higher pH because my orchids sit in water for a full week before I change it. So I like to start off at a higher pH so that as the water is evaporating and the water is becoming more acidic, they're getting a fuller range of nutrients. So if you look up, what pH different nutrients are absorbed at, they are, there is, a small sweet spot in the middle, but they are absorbed at different levels. So at a higher pH, you're going to get some nutrients. There's going to be some crossover at a certain level, and then at a lower pH, other nutrients are going to be more available. So I start off as a higher pH at the beginning of the week, and then as the water is evaporating and becoming more acidic, those nutrients that are available at the more acidic side of the pH are becoming available to the orchid. And I've actually tested this out. You know, I've taken the orchid out of the water at the end of the week and put my pH meter in, and the acidity, the pH does change. So I know that that's definitely something that happens, at least in my environment. So my advice to you, if you're looking for answers on what you should do, is keep your environment and your orchids, the type of orchids that you have, because not all orchids get fertilized the same. Your environment is going to dictate how frequently and how much you give them. Your growing preferences are going to change. The way you grow is going to change. If you're not growing in water culture and you're growing in sphagnum moss, or you're growing in lava rock, or you're growing in bark, you know, it's going to change what needs to be done for your orchid. So definitely take those into consideration. I strongly advise you never to do just what someone else does. Doing research pays off. It really does. I did so much research in this past year because I really wanted to not just grow orchids, but make them happy. And the results in my collection, I mean, I am by no means a professional. Don't think I'm trying to play myself off to be. I am still a novice, but just doing research helps so much. When I first started growing, I followed what other people did, and my collection suffered. It didn't do as well as it could have done because I was so busy saying, well, this person's doing it this way, so I'm going to try that, and da-da-da-da. And the improvement in my collection since I did research and really thought about what I was doing and what they need has been astounding. And I have some super exciting stuff going on, which I'm not going to share in this video. I will share in another video. But yeah, super proud of my collection and so happy at the response of my orchids, just because I decided to invest my time in figuring out what my plants need. So I strongly suggest that you digest that information. If you have any questions and, you want me to answer them, I will do my best. I am not, again, a scientist or even scientifically inclined. I can hear something and understand it and apply it, but as far as, translating it back to you, maybe not so much, but I will do my best to be of as good assistance as possible. But take whatever I say, take your environment under consideration, what your plants need, and then, watch it unfold as your orchids just start to really love your environment as you come to understand what they need in your environment, because mine certainly are, and I'm just so grateful that I've been able to turn into a success at growing orchids instead of an orchid killer, because that's what I was for many years, and now not so much. They're all happy. So I hope you guys are all having a great day. I hope that was comprehensive and understandable. And if you have any questions, certainly let me know. If you have any knowledge that you want to share, certainly comment as well. But otherwise, I hope you're all having a great day, and I will talk to you all next time.